Hello everybody, I'm Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat Mac and I talk about Disney products and Disney in general. So how's it going today, Kat?
I'm doing great. Especially because I have this tune stuck in my head. That's been stuck in my head for the last 3 days now. It goes, Davy, Davy Crockett, da-da-da-da-da-da.
He punches Indians and he fights back. He is Davy Crockett, and he's king of the wild frontier. That's right. Today we're going to talk about that film that everyone has probably heard of because it is a childhood staple, Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. And the only thing that I ever remembered about the film was that song.
Oh my god, that song. It's one of those annoying little earworms. It'll never leave. It'll never leave.
Like DuckTales, woo.
No! Damn you.
We'll get to that eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's one of those songs that you really sticks with you throughout your childhood. Every kid has seen this. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that I actually hadn't watched this movie till my adult years, but, you know, having grown up with the Disney Channel and, you know, the Disney specials and everything, for some reason, I always remembered this song. And I remember Davy Crockett and his was it coon fur hat, and that's pretty much all I remember. But even though, like, I never saw it and that's the only thing I remember, that has stuck with me forever.
You know why this film really stuck with me for a while? It's because my real name is David. You know, you may know me as Zenith Will Rule, but my real name is David, and my parents would constantly call me Davey because of this film. So, yeah.
Aww,
there's a little bit of trivia for you.
Little Davy Dave.
Yeah. So, Davy Crockett is actually not technically a film. It is a collection of 20-minute short films that were, like, brought together, and they're all about Davy Crockett and his exploits. And unfortunately, because there's three and they're radically different, they feel disjointed kind of transitioning between them. Each adventure doesn't really end so much as go on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of being a movie, it really does feel like it's just going from, you know, point A to point B to point C to point D, and there's, like, no reference to anything beforehand. But as individual shorts, you know, it actually does make a rather exciting, like, TV show, or it would had there been more. And interesting thing to note is that Davy Crockett is kind of the reason why we have the Disney Channel. Because Walt Disney at the time was trying to get funds for Disneyland, and he figured the best way to do that was if he produced some sort of TV show that he knew the kids would watch, and, you know, he would be giving a starting TV channel, like, you know, publicity and everything, and in return he would get funds for his park. And, you know, it worked out magnificently, because everybody remembers Davy Crockett, like I said, that song, the hats, the fact that it's an action-adventure show. So it was a really big hit, and
it's probably the reason why we have Pioneerland in Disney World.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. There's a lot of things in a Pioneerland, Frontierland, all that's influenced from Davy Crockett. And another thing is that Davy Crockett is actually a real person, believe it or not. Because a lot of people, for some reason, don't really know that. They kind of think, you know, he's a fictionalized, you know, a fictionalized character like, say, Paul Bunyan or Pecos Bill. But no, he's an actual, like, real person who existed at this point in time. And, of course, the biggest thing that he's known for, you know, aside from his hat and all that, is, you know, the Battle of the Alamo.
And I mean, it's pretty much, he was the Chuck Norris of their times. Only he could actually do half the stuff that he did in the movies.
Mhm. And of course, you know, he was also He was also very bold for his time too, because he was one of the few politicians that actually sympathized with the Native Americans and the fact that they kept being driven off their lands, despite numerous treaties saying that they can have this as long as the white man can have this.
And that was interesting to me, especially after watching Peter Pan, because there wasn't really a lot of Indian sympathy at that time. A lot of people were just really into forcing them off the land for, because, we got to get the West. We have to go westward ho for adventure and gold in the hills and stuff like that. That everyone was pushing the Indians off the land. And it was interesting to see that Disney made a film where the Indians were treated with a bit of sympathy.
Mm-hmm. Especially after, what made the red man red.
Yeah, I think this does kind of even the stakes out a bit.
Mm-hmm. Right, so yeah, this King of the Wild Frontier is, even though there's technically 4 parts to it, it's actually made up of 3 different segments. First one is Davy Crockett, Indian Fighter, where he and his friend Georgie basically have 2 different battles with 2 different Indian groups. Second one is Davy Crockett Goes to Congress, which focuses on his years as a politician. And then the third act is his final battle, Davy Crockett at the Alamo.
And like I said, it does kind of feel a little bit disjointed in the messages they're trying to tell in each one. But let's go individually. First we have Indian Fighter. And yes, it's pretty much, he's commissioned by the Army, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. They get him to help him fight the Indians because he's such a good tracker. He's so good at what he does that they have no choice but to go with him. He's seen in the opening scene trying to kill a bear by grinning it to death. And now, what do I mean by that? Well, grinning is the term grinning, as he puts it, is you just stay there and you smile and just stand still, and then eventually the bear's just going to drop dead.
So it's like the men who stare at goats, but with bears.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that aside, it actually is a pretty good segment, because you see just how cunning and how tough Davy and his friend George is. Because, they're excellent trackers. They can track Indians, through anywhere, through land, through water, through swamp, anything. And and of course, because, they're all rough and tumble and everything, they often butt heads with the head of the army. And mm-hmm. The head of the army is actually run by Andrew Jackson, pre-presidential campaign. So. And
it's really funny to see their interaction, but I think the best thing about it is, like, Davy Crockett and his best friend, there are only 2 people, but they kill more Indians in one, battle than the entire army did. Like, the army has guns, mm-hmm. and they're not doing anything against the Indians, and 2 people are completely messing these Indians up.
The best part was when they're leading the army through the swamps, and the general starts getting impatient because he believes that it's taking too long, and decides to do the logical thing, which is to, walk on the obvious path out in the open, where anybody could see him. And of course, that goes about as well as you expect, and of course, Davy and George knew this would happen, so they're, hanging out to the side thinking, should we help them? Yeah, I guess we'll help them. So they ride up on their horses, and they start shouting to each other, saying, all men at arms, like, forces, head this way, basically making it sound like they have a huge legion at their beckoning call, which fools not only the soldiers, but the Indians as well, who retreat before they can become overwhelmed. And, of course, you can imagine their faces when they realize it's just the 2 men.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, when you're in the South, you pay attention to the people who live in the South. He's king of the wild frontier for a reason.
Mm-hmm. And The second battle is, again, they're continuing to track this group, because the main reason for this is they're trying to track down this particular group. It's a small tribe run by an Indian named Red Stick, who is the only tribe leader that hasn't signed a peace treaty, with the settlers. And he's actually trying to, resist and, try to fight for his land. So it's up to Davey to sort of track him down and convince him to sign it. And that doesn't go over quite as well.
Mm-hmm. They have their battle, and at the end he convinces Red Stick, okay, make the treaty, we'll let you keep your land. I give you my word as Davy Crockett, who cares about those army folks, I'll fight them if they do anything. And, but there is something about it that is incredibly silly. After winning the battle, he refuses to kill Red Stick, and Red Stick's like, why did you do that? And he's just like, well, you see, that there's a law that's higher than I am that says, thou shalt not kill. Even though we saw him knife a bear and kill it earlier, and kill several Indians.
Not to mention, when he first appears to them to demand the freedom for his friend who was captured, an Indian sees him, is about to react, he instantly throws a knife into his chest and kills him.
It's like, hypocrisy, you're swimming in it. But honestly, while it is hypocrisy, it's delightfully cheesy. Mm-hmm. And, it's bad, but at the same time, he is battling to make a treaty with these Indians, and so you can kind of see where the filmmaker was coming from, in the scene.
Yeah, I just think that the message was really jarbled up. Because, this is an action-adventure flick, settlers versus Indians, and yeah, it's kind of hard to take a guy seriously about, not killing anyone when he clearly does it repeatedly himself.
So, if he wasn't killing, then people would be like, oh, but he's not killing them Indians, it's not action-packed, and, people are gonna be people, so. Mm-hmm. But, another big thing about this segment is that you see the worst, practical effects I have seen in a film, and it's not like bad, like, oh my god, I don't want to see this film. It's bad, it's like, I want to see this again.
Yes.
When he kills the bear in the beginning of the film, with his knife, they bring it back, and it is clearly a bear suit. Like, they don't even try to hide the fact that it's a bear suit.
Yes, seriously, it's like no bigger than like 2 or 3 teddy bears.
And then there's also the scene where he's supposedly being attacked by a crocodile.
Oh god, this is my favorite scene.
And it's not really a crocodile, it is stock footage of a crocodile. It's so badly integrated, but I love it. I really love it.
But it is so great. You see him just going through a swamp. You keep cutting back and forth to, again, the stock footage of the crocodiles swimming about. And then they have this fake-ass alligator just suddenly pop up, and he whacks it with the barrel of his gun. And then you cut to stock footage of an alligator doing a death roll.
It's awesome, and it's so good at the same time. Like, this reminds me of The Sword and the Rose with that boulder scene. Mm-hmm. Wait, not The Sword and the Rose. It reminds me of why can't I remember the name of the film?
Rob Roy.
Yeah. It reminds me of Rob Roy in the boulder scene, and that's how cheesy and bad it is, and yet so awesome at the same time. Or The Sword and the Rose when they're fighting the silly little wrestling match.
Davy Crockett, punching out stock footage. Oh, that was great.
Seriously, that made the part so enjoyable, and this is the only one I feel had an actual ending, where he had Red Stick agree to sign the treaty. It had a clear ending to it, a clear victory to it. Mm-hmm. The next 2 parts, not so much.
Yeah, there's one part. It's kind of an in between, sort of, connecting Indian Fighter to Goes to Congress. This part, you know, after the war. Well, I shouldn't say after the war. During the war, Davies is allowed to go home, visit his family and everything, and he believes it's time that his family moved further out west so that way he wouldn't have to leave them for so long when he would go to combat. He and Georgie find a small settlement where they are actually auctioning off land, but as he soon finds out, the place is actually run by a man named Bigfoot, who is not only racist against Indians, but is a huge bully and, basically tries to use his influence and his lackeys and resources to try to drive everyone out of the town and just keep everything for himself. So he goes up against the guy in a shooting contest, and and even though I technically think they tied because they both shot the same target.
Actually, they didn't. It wasn't really a tie because Bigfoot shot a fraction of an inch to the left of his first shot.
Oh,
but
okay.
Davy Crockett hit exact bullseye twice.
Okay. Alright. So, sorry, I keep thinking of Robin Hood where, the arrow lands in the same exact spot, but because, he was the last one who shot, that means he automatically won.
Well, it does have the feeling of Robin Hood. You can see where they got the inspiration for this from because, they made Robin Hood and his merry men first.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, having got his spot of land, he's, preparing to build his house and everything, but then he runs into his neighbor, Charlie Two Shirts, and his family, who have been driven off their land by Bigfoot, saying that, they're Indians and they have no right to land. So
even though he has a deed to his land right there.
Yeah. Again, racism at its finest. So, of course, Davey takes things into his own hands and challenges Bigfoot to a one-on-one match where we see the most hilarious choreographed fight ever.
Ever since The Sword and the Rose.
Yes. That's one thing that unfortunately kind of ruins this film, is the fact that the fight choreography is so bad.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. Not so much for, the shooting and stuff, but, when people get shot, you can tell it's staged. You can tell, people don't fall that way when they get shot.
Yeah, that was one of the things that made the first part of Davy Crockett so hilarious, because you'd see the Indians and the soldiers fighting each other, and every time one of them got shot, about 90% of that time, the person would always make sure to fall into the river. Even if there was no, logical, physical way that their body would arch toward the water, they would just suddenly, lean their bodies towards the direction of the water and jump off.
They'd get shot in the back, and they'd fall sideways. It's so enjoyably bad. It's like it is basically a B movie.
It's like first season of Star Trek bad. But again, like you said, that's what makes it so enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, because with bad choreography comes a lot of suggestive poses.
Yeah.
I could probably make a 5-minute montage of Davy Crockett fighting people and just being in said poses, and just add sexy music to the background, and people would totally be fooled by it.
So that was the first part of Davy Crockett. And honestly, I think it's the best. I think it's the best part. It's delightfully cheesy. There's a lot of action going on,
mm-hmm.
and it's just a whole lot of fun. The second part, Davy Crockett Goes to Congress, is somewhat boring, actually.
Yeah, because, politics are so much fun. Right, kids? But then again, this is being historically accurate, so you gotta give them credit for that. But yeah, after Davy frees the town from the influence of Bigfoot, they're so grateful that they make him like sort of like their sheriff, and then decide that he's such an influential figure, he should also run for like governor as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at first he doesn't want to because he finally got his own piece of land. He wants to move his family in and everything, and then something tragically convenient happens.
His wife dies.
Yeah, he finds out that his wife had died from a disease, and his 2 kids were now being raised by his sister-in-law. Which pretty much... yeah. It's pretty much...
It's like, finally he has a victory. He's, like, winning all things, everything's going his way. Then all of a sudden, aww. And he cries about it for a scene. And then it's never mentioned again.
Pretty much. Because it's like, oh no, Davy Crockett's about to settle down. We can't have that. Bam, dead wife. There we go. Now he's free to do more stuff.
It's like, why did they even introduce the wife in the first place? They could have, well, I know why they did, because they needed a plot to get him away from the army in one scene. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, but you could have done anything. You could have said, oh, I just want to go off and get some rations. You don't have to have him go in to his wife only to kill her off like the next part. It seems very bad storytelling.
Yeah, it's nice that, they actually had a female character in there, I guess, to keep it from being a sausage fest, but, yeah, she and the kids were kind of pointless. It's just like, oh, see, he's a family man. Oh, wait, the family's now hindering the story. Well, they're gone.
He was a family man, but his family's dead, and he doesn't care about his sons anymore, so, let's go a different route. Yay, we're brilliant. No.
Yeah, and basically this whole middle part is just, like we said, Davy Crockett, he's running for state legislator, and eventually works his way up to the House of Representatives. And his whole thing is that, again, he's pioneering for, Indian equality and for the little man and the poor man and all that, basically using his, truth-talking to kind of, and his reputation to garner him votes. And for the most part, it pretty much does work, and he even becomes advisor to Andrew Jackson as well. And there's pretty much no conflict up until, near the end, when you find out that one of the officials had set him up to be on this long speech campaign trip. That way he won't be at the House of Representatives to vote against a bill that will pretty much, tell the Indians to get off the land that was previously promised to them.
Yeah. And so he goes back and he's just like, well, the reason this law is brought to us is this is completely unjust. And he makes this whole big speech about how this is wrong to even have this kind of law in place right now. And if you do this, it's a disservice to the country you're from. And at the same time, you got to wonder, why do they listen to him? They wanted to have this bill put into place in the first place. I don't think his speech would have changed that.
Yeah, especially since he's talking about, like, all everyone wants is money, and all this bill is going to do is get them more money, and we can't let them have that money. It's like, you're talking to politicians here. That's all they care about. Yeah,
and so, while it is a very well-spoken speech, and it's a very heartfelt speech, I don't think it would have worked. And so, honestly, this part should be skipped. Nothing really integral to the plot happens. He goes and he runs for office. He talks to a bunch of political people. He says speeches that are very simple and just basically saying, I'm not good at making speeches, so just run the country right. And that's what he does.
Yeah, and, because he spoke up for the Indian bill, that pretty much cost him his political career because, apparently sympathizing with Indians, even though it gets you credit at first, saying it against the House of Representatives kills it for you.
Even though they agreed with his speech.
I don't know.
Logic.
This part's all over the place with its message.
Yeah, honestly, like, I really love the first part, but the second part really didn't need to be there. It felt so tacked on.
Yeah.
And as a sequel to anything, it's kind of just, ugh.
Yeah, like I said, it's pretty much there just to be, you know, a historical piece. Sorry, an historical piece, and that's about it. Like, there's no action, there's no, like, real intensity. I think the most dramatic thing is when you see him actually ride his horse from Massachusetts all the way down to Washington D.C. in order to veto the bill. That's like the most exciting part. Oh yeah, and he punches somebody. But
yeah,
that's about it.
Not much exciting happens really, and it's a shame. But there is the third part, Davy Crockett at the Alamo, and it's good, but it is a little bit disjointed as well. Basically, the first half of it is him wandering around with his best friend and with this random con man that he meets up with, and they're just roaming around nearby Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Then they meet up with an Indian, and then they find themselves at the Alamo. And so it really doesn't follow a logical progression of events until they get to the Alamo. And then it's pretty much them defending the Alamo. And it's a lot of action. It's nice and dramatic. It makes sense. But the events that lead them up to it, it doesn't fit.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, this part felt like even weaker than the Congress point did. But I mean, true, there's a lot more action and adventures and stuff, but it just really didn't do it for me. I found it like extremely boring. And you think like one of the greatest battles in American history would be like, you know, a small group of rebels, you know, going against the odds, you know, fighting with their very last breath would be exciting, and it just isn't. Especially since, like, anybody who's, you know, read up on American history will know how this ends.
They all die.
Mm-hmm.
But then we can't tell more stories about Davy Crockett then, can we? So...
Yeah.
And the thing that keeps nagging at the back of my mind, why did they bring the con man to the Alamo? Why did he stay? He's not a fighter. They even showcase one scene in the Alamo where he's doing the shell money trick for food. He's not a fighter.
Yeah.
Why does he go to the Alamo?
Yeah, I don't get that as well, because not just him, but also the Indian that they picked up. They call him Busted Luck, but because like they basically pick up these two men to bring with them on a potentially suicide mission, and for whatever reason, those two men decide to stay, even though neither of them has absolutely any reason to do so.
I mean, they make a case for the Indian that he's a guide, but you know, the Indian isn't really a fighter in that sense. Yes, Indians can fight, but with the Alamo, it's more gunfighting. It's more, you know, they're going to be fighting other people with guns. So they can't use bow and arrows.
Yeah, but not only that, you know, he's an Indian and most likely was driven off his land by these Texans. So why the hell would he be, you know, helping them out? Not only that, but it's been established that, you know, he cannot talk or understand aside from sign language. So chances are he wasn't even informed about what was going on at the Alamo and probably thought that, you know, they were going to get help and they were going to make it out okay, only to realize last minute, oh shit, did I bet on the wrong horse.
There's also some random Mexicans in the middle of the film.
Yeah, well, that's to be expected considering, you know, it is Mexico fighting the Texans for control of the Alamo.
That is true. It just, you'd figure when they're going through Texas, they randomly meet Mexicans who say, don't go over there, that's the Alamo. It seems so on the nose.
Yeah, and especially since that when we see the Mexican troops, yeah, they're not Mexican. They're white.
Yeah, they're
They're
not. And
all white
you can
guys.
clearly tell the difference between an actual Mexican that they show 5 minutes earlier and the people at the Alamo.
Yeah, me and my friend were having a debate about this last time we watched it together. Like, because when we looked at it first, we're like, wait a minute, aren't those, French soldiers? Isn't that their colors? Why are they all white? I mean, are they fighting the French? What the hell? It does not look right, and it doesn't help the fact that, like, at first I really thought that some of the scenes were stock footage from another movie, because the quality of the film, like, kind of fluctuates during battle. I'm thinking, wait,
It must have been filmed at different times of day, or they used day for night in some scenes.
I guess, but it just, I don't know, it didn't look right to me. I really think that, I mean, I tried looking it up, what Mexican soldiers look like, but I don't think that they wore outfits like that.
So, yeah, it just kind of ends after the Alamo, and overall, the best part is the beginning. It feels like a full story, and then they just didn't know what to do with it from there.
Yeah, and here's the weird thing. They actually try to sort of make it end in a sequel-esque fashion because here's the thing: the entire story of Davy Crockett is being told from his autobiography, which he wrote himself. And the thing was, it doesn't say, you don't see Davy Crockett get killed. You aren't told that he is killed. In fact, it says in there that, he wasn't killed. But they don't say what happens to him, from that point.
They don't really say what happens to anyone after that point. It just sort of just ends.
Yeah, because, I mean, you think they do something along the lines of, and all these poor men perished, to fight for America, and we honor them or something. No, it's just Davy Crockett in his journal saying, everyone thought that I died. Well, nope, I didn't. The end.
But, so yeah, if you're going to watch this film, I would say watch the beginning. Watch the Indian fighter bit, because that is awesome. It contains the best bits of the Davy Crockett theme song, which, as we have said, is so damn catchy and so fun. Actually, like, Davy Crockett, this 3-part television series, spawned a craze. Like, coonskin caps were, like, sold out. They even recorded the Ballad of Davy Crockett as, like, an actual song and put it out there. It was a really popular film.
And should we discuss the characters?
Yeah, let's talk about the characters. What about Davy Crockett himself? What do you think of him?
I like the character that he represents. He's kind of like, the old-time Indiana Jones. And the fact that, he's this guy who possesses these enormous, talents for both fighting, tracking, for conversation, and all that. He's a man that encompasses all these great talents. He's someone that all guys want to be. He's this legendary figure and everything. But as for the actor who plays him, I think they could have gotten someone with a little more charisma.
Yeah, the thing is, Davy Crockett is supposed to be like the best at everything. He's the best fighter, the best tractor, the best of the best. He's the most machismo man that ever lived. And at the same time, he is somewhat simple and, simple-minded in certain ways. But the way the actor doesn't bring that across, unfortunately. I mean, yes, the character still inspires people, but the thing is, this guy, he's always squinting off into the distance when he reads his lines. He's always, like, saying things in this monotone sort of voice. He's not the best actor.
No, he I know I know the actor Fess Parker has become like strongly identified with the role, and he kind of became like typecasted into it at a point. But I don't know, just like if you like I said, if you comparing him again to Indiana Jones, I mean, going up against Harrison Ford, he's charming, he's witty. If he can try to convince you to be on his side, you would be on his side. But with this guy, I mean, true, he seems well intentioned and everything, but in terms of, if he asked me to join him, in fighting the Indians or whatever, I'd be a little skeptical because, this guy doesn't seem that passionate about what he's talking about and is, again, kind of hypocritical in the things that he says. So
it really doesn't help that a lot of his messages are mixed at best.
Mm-hmm.
I think the actor could have been a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, I hate to, hate on Fess Parker and all that, but yeah, I would actually wouldn't mind, seeing a remake of this with them having a much better actor in place, just to see, the differences of, because I'm sure there's a lot that you can do with Davy Crockett. You could probably make a pretty long television show, just, not just what they have here, just a big long, maybe 3 seasons full of his adventures. So it's just a shame that, that it didn't last, as long as it should have. Next we have his best friend, George, or Georgie.
Who doesn't do too much.
Yeah, he really doesn't. He's kind of, the best friend, but he has proven to be just as competent as Davy is when it comes to, fighting and everything. And hey, he's played by a rather noteworthy actor, Buddy Ebsen. Some of you may know him from the Beverly Hillbillies.
The Beverly Hillbillies.
Like I said, true, he doesn't do that much, but, you can tell that he's there. He's not just some background character,
He has a presence. He's in all of the parts, and he's always there around Davy Crockett, but at the same time, he doesn't have a distinct personality. He's the best friend role, and that's him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that, Buddy Ebsen was so underutilized, but for what he does have, he does a good job of it. And for the few fighting we do see, I mean, he actually does pretty decent with his fight choreography. At least he tries.
Mm-hmm. So, those are the 2 main characters. The rest really don't appear that much.
Yeah, I mean, you have Davy's family, which you see only twice in the beginning, and then, of course, like we said, the wife gets offed off, and the kids you never ever see again, so they really don't matter. You have the army people, the Major Norton, who starts off as just, a naysayer, then becomes a supporter of Davy Crockett, but then turns around on him when he's running for state legislative. And then, President Andrew Jackson shows up once in a while, to remind you what time period it is. And, what was it? And then, of course, those 2 characters that show up in the Alamo segment who have no business being there and, pretty much gets killed off with everyone else and are pretty much completely useless. So, yeah, like you said, the other characters really don't matter.
It's Davy Crockett's film. I mean, you can tell immediately from the title, but it's all about Davy Crockett.
Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, this isn't the only Davy Crockett film. There is another one later on, Davy Crockett and the River Pirates.
And it is a prequel.
Well, in between quill, but whatever you want to call it. But yeah, because even though they ended him on the Alamo, and you think that'd be it for Davy Crockett, no, they got popular enough they decided, hey, let's resurrect the character and just, show his stuff before he got to the Alamo. And it didn't quite really last as long, since there's only, 2 major stories in there. But, hey, they tried, and hey, it was popular. For pretty much every kid in the time period had a coonskin hat.
Davy Crockett was big back in the day. It was like a big thing, like pirates and Indians, and those were the new big things back then. And so this did really well. And well, yes, while there are bad parts of Davy Crockett, I really enjoy the beginning. I really enjoy the cheesiness of it and just what it was trying to do.
hmm Yeah, I mean, obviously it's dated in the special effects and the dialogue and everything, but, in terms of being a historical piece, it does pretty good, getting the facts straight and everything for the most part. And as a movie, like you said, the beginning is the best part, and then it kind of trails off from there. I mean, I really hope that one day they actually do a remake of this, because if they have like the right budget and the best writers and everything, this could be a potentially epic piece.
In the right hands, it could do really well. But I think a lot of what made the original work was the cheesiness of it, was the idea that it was very campy, it was very B-movie quality, it used stock footage for a crocodile. I mean, you didn't have to take it seriously, but it did still have good messages in it if you could pick them apart.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we should also mention a cameo that is made in the movie.
Yeah, they use stock footage of a prairie dog in the film, and it's integrated just as well as the rest of it.
I know, it's like, I'm watching this, I watched the film beforehand, so I didn't, I knew it was stock footage, but I didn't think it was from a previous movie, and then we watched The Vanishing Prairie, and then I watched it again, and I'm like, oh my god, it's that prairie dog, holy shit!
I mean, they didn't have too much of a budget. I think it looked good, but you can't take it seriously. You just can't take it seriously.
Mm-mm. Nope, but that's kind of what's fun about it.
So that was Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. It's not a bad film. It's very disjointed, and the best part is the beginning.
And that will be our last live action, thankfully, for the next two podcasts. Because the next one, we're finally getting back to animation.
Yay! We get to talk about Lady and the Tramp.
Yay! One of my faves when I was little. Yes, we'll be watching Lady and the Tramp. And then after that, Lady and the Tramp 2. Oh, dear God.
Why?
Unnecessary. But, yeah.
But anyway, guys, thank you for listening. This has been Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, and we will get to the prequel sometime later on. Mm-hmm. If you have any comments, criticisms, suggestions, or Disney movie suggestions for us to review that don't fall under main canon, let us know. You can always leave a comment at zenithrule.blip.tv in the comments thread, or you could always follow us at twitter.com/zenithrule and twitter.com/fmtrabbit, or on Facebook at facebook.com/zenithrule and facebook.com/catmac. And we have our Facebook pages, our groups. So we have Team Die Zenith. Just search Team Die Zenith in the search bar, and you'll find the Facebook group. Or you can always join the Disney Debate Facebook group and chat with us and talk about Disney movies.
Mm-hmm. And just a reminder for everyone, October 8th, that is going to be the premiere of my brand new show, Down the Rabbit Hole with FMT. And my first review will be of The Little Mermaid, so stay tuned, and I hope you like it.
And until then, I'm Zenith Rule.
And I'm Kat Mac /FMTRabbit/Kat T Critic.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching The Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.